Hello, everyone. My name is Dawson, and today I'm joined by members of Pathio here today, Sapphire, Ivy, and Alexander. And today we're really excited to have Qazi and Aloshy with us today for a conversation about the path to medical school. Qazi is a second year medical student at the University of Rochester School of Medicine and Dentistry, and Aloshy here is an incoming first year medical student at SUNY Downstate Health Science University. Today will be an interesting panel. We'll hear about their perspective of like what medical school is like, what students should prepare for, and how they stay grounded through the challenges of the pre-med pathway. So with all that in mind, I'll give over to Qazi and Aloshy to introduce themselves. I guess Qazi, you can go first.
Hi everybody. My name is Qazi. I am a second year medical student at the University of Rochester. And just for a little bit of pretext, I was born in India. I came here as like a kid, so roughly 4 years old. And then grew up in New York City. I went to CUNY, Hunter College. And then, my major was human biology and political science. And I ended up getting into Rochester through the early assurance program. So that was pretty neat. And other than that, I think a lot of the other things I'll probably bring up during the questions. But yeah, I didn't end up taking any gap years before going to medical school, and that's because of the early assurance program. And yeah, I mean, it was yeah, Hunter grad. So I think maybe a lot of us might be from CUNY system here. So I know what it is to go through it.
Yep. I think all of us here are from Cutie. Aloshy, you to choose yourself now.
So my name's Aloshy. I have a very similar story to Kazi in terms of
Oh,
coming
that's
here. I came here from India when I was 4 years old. I'll be starting my first year at Downstate in like 2 weeks or so. I went to City College, which is also a CUNY, and then I got accepted with regular admission to Downstate with one gap year.
So I guess we gotta start with the questions. So I think the first question is just to start us off is like, just want to start it off simple and like pretty broad. So question I have for one of you guys is what first led each of you towards medicine? So um, one of you can take the spotlight. I guess Kazi.
oh, okay. Yeah, I got you. So I guess first and foremost, what kind of brought me towards medicine, I think that one super nice aspect about medicine is that you get to work with like the most up-to-date technology possible, and you also get to use like it's very intellectually stimulating. And I say this, I know like sometimes like bio one and bio two, like we're learning about like those plants and like the urinary systems of like different fish species and whatnot. And I don't know, I mean that wasn't as interesting to me, but the human body stuff, it's actually it's extremely fun to study. Like once you're like completely immersed in it, like it's genuinely like very interesting. And I know this sounds kind of like super nerdy, and I wouldn't have said it before I started medical school, but now that I'm in it, I think it's very fun. And other than that, medicine, like it's like, obviously there's the obvious stuff, job security. You probably have like one of the most secure jobs in the country in terms of just pay, mobility, stability, etc. And that's besides the point. I think that being able to just be in an environment where you can kind of just, use your brain and work with people who are also extremely capable and talented and actually make a difference and directly see that difference in somebody's life. It's pretty fun, and it's been pretty cool so far.
Yeah, I totally agree with like the fact like the human body system, even like for bio, like the units that went over like the human body system, I think for me personally was more interesting than like learning about like the plants or like the worm. But I guess
Yeah.
Loshi, what's your take on the question?
I think what drew me to medicine was just generally understanding how all these sort of conditions work in people itself. Like you guys said, it's really interesting to learn about that. Growing up, I was always one of those people that was like scared I had this illness or that illness. And oftentimes, when I'm scared of something, I'm really driven to find an answer and understand how it works. So for me, going into medicine was more or less kind of a way to arm myself with the knowledge of how all these conditions work. And through volunteering, I more or less learned that a lot of people have a similar fear where they don't understand their health. It's really a concerning thing for them. So I found it really touching how you could connect with people on helping them to understand their body, their condition, and work through any conditions they might be having. So I really appreciate that aspect of medicine. That's what drew me in.
So the second question is regarding your undergrad experience. How did it prepare you for medical school in terms of decisions, like why you majored and what you did, or minored in what you did, the classes that you took, or the experiences you had, like the extracurriculars or any clubs that you did?
Do you want me to start for this one?
Yeah.
So as for my major, and my minor as well, I kind of min-maxed that for medicine just because, dude, when I went into undergrad, I wasn't even sure if I wanted to be a doctor. At one point, I thought I was going to be an engineer, but then I was like, oh, maybe I will just do medicine because biology is remotely more interesting than trying to do a lot of this engineering stuff. And I took like calculus in freshman year, and there I was like, engineering's not going to work. It's going to have to be medicine. This is like the biology is way more interesting than just sitting there doing all these equations. So I kind of locked in at that point, and I already applied biology because I had just a remote thought that I might want to do medicine. And then it kind of worked out because a lot of the pre-med requirements were biology ones. And then in the middle of that, I ended up getting a chem minor as well because I was one class away after completing the pre-med requirements. As for the clubs and things, it was things that were somewhat interesting to me at the time as well. Like I was the VP for biotechnology club. That was really something interesting because I knew that if I was doing engineering, it'd probably be something BME because all the medical technologies available, that was something interesting, but I couldn't do all the math. So I might as well help connect students with the biotechnology that's coming up and is being developed by the companies around us. So that was that experience. Other than that, undergraduate, yeah, I think literally academics wise, I just stuck to the regular goal and road straight to medicine.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you. And then for me, I think Hunter was a great school to go to for I think any pre-health career. And overall, I'd say the undergrad experience was pretty nice. I will say I wasn't like Macaulay or whatever honors thingies that they have over there. So like the advising, it's kind of like you gotta figure everything else out by yourself, which it is what it is. But it's not I guess it makes you very proactive, so that's a good skill to have. Um, in terms of preparing for medical school, and I think you guys will probably find this out as you guys go on. And Hunter, our GPAs are extremely overinflated compared to like actual schools, and that's a reality that I noted. Like, okay, so just I guess for the record, I had like a 3.98 in Hunter, and although that sounds good on paper, it's like, our classes are just, you know what they are. Um, but like in reality, like a lot of my peers from other schools who also had high GPAs. Their curriculums were, I'd say, much, much more rigorous than what we had at Hunter. And that's something that you know, with Hunter students that came to Rochester, it's something that's very evident that um foundationally we might not be starting at the same foot. And I think that's fine because you eventually pick up the pace and you learn how to study and all that good stuff. But it is something that it's important to keep in mind. And maybe that's because I also took some classes during COVID or whatnot. But other than that, I think Punter being next to like Cornell and all those other big research facilities, that was very, very, very nice. And it helps connect you with major academic institutions that are like really big names. And other than that, I think undergrad was nice. I mean, not having student loans is very good, especially because you end up racking up a lot of them, down the line. So that's something that's nice.
So, in addition to your classes, your undergrad classes, I know you guys both have hands-on clinical experiences. How did those experiences shape your understanding of patient care and like confirm your interests in medicine?
I think I start for this one. So the hands-on clinical experience that I had, the main one was I worked wound care, actually the same place Dustin did. And I remember I met Dustin and I told him, yo, like you should go ahead and work with this guy because he's like the GOAT. And he I think he ended up working for me. It was Dr. Uche. He's a wound care doctor. He was previously like an orthopedic surgeon. He made like a transition. And it was very fun. It was nursing homes, mostly like low income nursing homes. So because of that, regulatory wise, we got to do a lot of hands-on stuff, which was fun. Put dressings on. Honestly, more hands-on stuff than I get to do now sometimes, which is interesting. But yeah, no, it was fun. You really get to work with like a population of patients that is very ill. requires very complex medical decisions to be made on them. And it's interesting to see how like they progress. And also like socioeconomically, like you get to see one of the biggest costs that the healthcare system currently has, and that's, supporting geriatric patients who are on ventilators and stuff like that. So it puts things into perspective on how much resources we use and where we use them.
I think my clinical experience, the primary one, was at least very much the same as Qazi and Dawson, because that's also where I met Dawson with Dr. Uche. I think working with Dr. Uche was a great opportunity because he was probably the most forgiving MD I've ever met.
Yeah.
Like if you messed up, he wasn't there to just tell you off. He more or less wanted you to learn what you did wrong and do better next time. But I think being in that supportive environment at least helped me to get more confidence if I did mess up, because that was one of my biggest fears. It was like, oh no, the outcome's gonna be for these patients if I end up messing something up.
Yeah.
But once you get over that fear, I think you're more or less ready to put your best foot forward and try however you can for a lot of these patients who often didn't like had bad experiences with medical teams in the past, or just didn't get proper care early on enough in life to where they were like in the state that they were when we got to them. But I think it also really gave me a great chance to learn how to work with many people from different backgrounds for myself, because I've never interacted with patients in a nursing home before. It was a good chance to learn about the conditions that they were in, as well as the realities a lot of geriatric patients were facing at the time. So it was really enlightening in a population I never thought I'd have the chance to work with. But I'm glad I did, because it was probably one of the most sensitive populations we could work with in terms of having to keep clean between patients and also like earning their trust.
That sounds like quite the experience. As we know, many pre-med students focus on just getting clinical hours and not really building up those connections with patients and their doctors. What advice can you give to students who are following on your same path on how to just take advantage of these opportunities so whenever they pursue their career in medicine, they'll be able to kind of use these experiences in the future?
I get to start for this one. So I think the most important factor when you're getting your clinical experiences in is to make sure you're learning something every time you're able to go there, or like getting some new lesson out of it. So if you're just doing this like your regular routine and it's kind of becoming some brain dead thing where you're not either learning something new about the field or getting a new experience, working on some sort of relationship with a patient, I feel like at that point you're kind of at a dead end in that clinical experience where you could just sit there and get more hours, but you might not be getting the full meaning out of it. But if you find yourself, constantly, I guess, challenging yourself, whether it's interacting with people or taking on new tasks, or in our case, I guess, trying more complicated combinations of wound dressing on more sensitive wounds, I think if you're able to grow in some form from every experience, you're in the right place.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, that's really well put. And I also with like Dr. Uche, and um it was very nice because I think he really pushed you to understand like how to work in a team, how to work in a high-paced environment, how to not care about like getting dirty or messy, or geriatrics, a lot of feces, like our hands are like deep in like bone and like feces and body fluids. And now like for me, like when I'm like doing, when I'm working with cadavers, or like recently we had like a skills lab where we were like doing like endoscopic spine surgery and like opening up somebody's back, and I don't care if like my hands gets like the bones could be all over me, like I've already been through that with Uche. So it's like exposure that's very it's like desensitizes you, like you're ready to actually, like, that's the real, it doesn't get realer than that. So that's something that made it really meaningful. It's not like one of those like, okay, it's like, I also worked as a derm MA after getting into med school, because it's like a chill derm MA job. You just go and give everybody some type of acne medication, Accutane, whatever. And like that's like it's a way different. Now I was just like chilling, like like it's not anywhere near the same as like something that I had with Uche, and it was probably the best clinical experience that I've personally had.
All those things. Now for like personal questions I want to ask each of you individually is for Kazi. while you were working as an undergrad, you also did basic science research in the Schwartz lab and also community health research as well. So what did those experiences teach you about the differences between like learning something or a disease or a topic in a lab and understanding and applying that to people you met or in terms of like your clinical experience as well?
Yeah, I think for the basic science research, honestly, as an undergraduate, it's really important to note that you're going to be very, very clueless about like the major diseases that you're studying, just because like one, you don't have the technical skills to do a lot of the complicated experiments by yourselves. Two, you don't have like the necessary like biological understanding to really understand the question in like a way that your PI or your postdoc understands the question. So I think it's like a common trap that like maybe some undergrads get into where they kind of focus too much on like looking for a particular outcome or like the most complicated topic. I think with basic science research, the skills that are very important to take away is know the basics of what you're doing and why you're doing it. Know like, okay, if I studied liver cancer in mice, right? So I learned the basics of like pathology, what causes the cascade that leads to hepatocellular carcinoma, what's like the incidence of hepatocellular carcinoma, things that people are going to ask you about that you should know off the top of your hand. Like, nobody's going to ask you about like, oh, what type of single cell RNA sequencing did you do to make sure that this particular molecule is No, it's not gonna, people are not gonna ask you about that. And it's very important that you take it as as an opportunity to learn how to build like a proper mentor-mentee relationship, because with basic science, you don't really get published that fast. It's going to take years before you get a publication. And that's honestly like for med school, like as much as, we try not to say it, like publications matter, right? It's so much a numbers game. And it's very important that you're able to have those conversations that, okay, so if I do this X, Y, and Z, will that lead to a publication? And although it's going to seem very awkward, it's like conversations that you need to have. And, that's something that I think that I was able to learn how to do through my basic science research. That's very applicable even now. So yeah, that's kind of uh, my answer for that question.
And for Aloshi, you did survey-based research and eye movement research. What did this teach you about learning how to think more scientifically, and how did you present this in your application?
I think the two researches I did, the survey-based one definitely helped me to kind of refresh myself on the full scientific method, because for that research at least, my PI was very hands-off. It was considered independent study. So I had the general gist of what he wanted out of the research, but for the most part, he just said, here's a sample of a survey. Go write your survey, show it to me, get it approved, get it cleared through the school. Then you can go out and survey students. Once you get the surveying done, give me the results. I'll tally that up. Okay, now you have the results here. Write your conclusions. So I think it really helped me to figure out what the process was like for writing an actual paper, and also helped me to realize how long it actually takes to get a publication. I thought this would be like a 1.5 year ordeal, but I got that published like around the time I was getting accepted to schools. And I think I finished that research like sometime in my third year. So it took like another year to get it published, sending things to journals, getting revisions. But that taught me about how
Yeah.
the whole process is going to be. Like, it's not going to be a quick and easy process, even if it's survey-based research. As for the eye movement research, I ended up in that lab because I thought the professor's classes were interesting and I wanted to learn more about what type of research he did. And I found it was eye movement. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Eyes are an interesting appendage we have, or interesting feature we have. I'd like to learn how eye movements work. So I ended up going to that lab, and it was a great opportunity to learn how research with human subjects works, because that's a whole another ordeal. Because now you got to get consent forms, and you got to make schedules to get these guys in the lab. And you think it's like a quick 1 hour thing, but it might take like a week to plan a 1 hour eye experiment with people. So I think that helped teach me time management and schedule arrangement, especially with classes going on, like having to come into the office in odd hours, especially because I don't live on campus, so I'd be driving down from like Yonkers all the way to Harlem to run on a subject research that might take 15 minutes and then drive back. But I think in presenting that to med schools, I used it as an opportunity to show I had good time management. I knew how the scientific method worked, and I kind of knew what I was getting into when it came to publishing papers as well as working with human subjects.
So separate from your guys' research, I know that you guys have experience in like teaching and mentorship. How do you say like those like leadership roles help you grow beyond like like being a strong student on paper?
I think that I think it's very nice to show in an application that like you're not someone who's like a good learner but also a good teacher, and it's something with Uche that, I mean, Dr. Osadabe, that he let us write on our applications. He let like the older volunteer medical assistants kind of teach the younger ones, and obviously like the way I wrote that, the way I tied that into my application was like I said, I was I was like a supervisor or kind of like somewhat of a lead in the volunteer operation. And it was something that they asked me about a lot, like, oh, like when you're teaching like a younger student, what are some things that XYZ? And I think it looks really good to show that you're able to properly like mentor students. um and even now, like as a med student, I work with some undergrads here at Rochester, and it's very nice to be able to mentor people, because it not only makes sure it not only like you need to know what you're doing and be able to explain it in like a manner that someone who hasn't necessarily taken the same courses as you would understand. So it makes sure that you know what you're doing and you have a complete understanding about your research and your projects. But it also kind of helps you eventually find someone that can kind of help you, because like honestly all like the undergraduates that even like in lab in Schwartz lab, I kind of mentored Sylvia a bit, I want to say. And she helped me a lot more than I think I ever helped her. So that's nice. It's nice to have those relationships.
I think it's a similar take on my end. I think the mentorship, more or less, the biggest thing I learned with that was that mentorship and teaching entirely is a give and take experience. It's not just you just keep giving information down. As much as you want to like teach the person that you're responsible for about what you know, it's important that you're also open to listening to what they know, because they might teach you something new as well. I think it's important to keep that open mind, but also be ready for whatever feedback they might have for your teaching as well. But I think the biggest thing is just having patience. If you're just willing to listen to their qualms and then kind of offer personalized care for their challenges or whatever they might be dealing with at the time, then you're gonna have an easier time than just giving a cookie cutter response to every single person you oversee. And I think
Yeah.
that is also what Dr. Uche taught us in his like mentorship of us when he was teaching us, because I don't think we all got the same instruction booklet. It really was just we show up, whoever the other the lead wound care guys at the time is just gonna take over on teaching you, and then worst comes to worst, you reach a situation where neither of you have the answer. Dr. Uche is there to take over and provide some
Yeah.
instruction. I think that was a really good like role model sort of experience as to how teaching should be.
Those sound like great experiences. I mean, let's take a step forward for the application process. I mean, Qazi and Aloshy, you guys had very similar backgrounds, both going to medical school, but different pathways in the sense where Qazi got through an early assurance program while you took a gap year. And what are these advantages and disadvantages and challenges of each path? How did it affect your journey?
I guess I can get started. So for me in particular, I didn't expect to get into Rochester's early assurance program. I will say I think a lot of early assurance programs are very luck based and not skill based, because it's like there's such a small amount of seats, and like you could kind of throw your name in the hat and hopefully it gets picked. But yeah, so I applied, and I applied and forgot about it. Essentially, it was not really something that I saw myself getting into, because like what are the odds? I think they only take like a very 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 few people from Hunter. But yeah, no, I mean, it was a pleasant surprise that I got in. And because of that, I guess I didn't have to go through the traditional route in that involves taking the MCAT and all of that. So I think that for people who are doing early assurance programs, don't bet on getting into the early assurance programs, because I could tell you that, like, for instance, for me, Jason was also my intern at Schwartz Lab. I don't know if you guys know Jason, or Dustin, you might, but me and him, we both applied to the same program. We're both the same exact person on paper. Like we had the same GPA, same extracurriculars, same volunteering. We were like the same person. And like I think that even like yeah, like yeah, it was the same exact person. So when they ended up picking, I think they only picked one of us because we also got the letter of rec from the same person. So they ended up choosing me, and I wouldn't say they chose me because I was better, because Jason got into Duke, and Jason's very qualified and talented as well. So yeah, like it's just the luck of the draw. I know like Jason was a bit bummed out about not getting to Rochester originally, which I told him like it's bullshit. Like, like it's such a luck based thing. So that's my advice. So don't like go and apply, but don't think that if you don't get in, it's because you weren't a good applicant or a good student.
The regular application cycle can only be compared to a story such as the Odyssey.
Yeah.
That is like a full circle, trial after trial. I was an optimistic kid. I was like, I'm gonna make it in no gap years, light work, third year MCAT apply. The application process is a battle of its own. And then you finish the application cycle, you're like, oh, this is gonna be chill after this. No, the waiting is also terrible. The MCAT was terrible. It was only, I don't think there was an upside to being in the regular application cycle.
Yeah.
There was I can't think of like a single good point. Maybe like the period after getting accepted to like a school you want to go to is all sunshine and rainbows because you're like, oh, now if I get into another school, it's just like a cherry on top of the cherry. But no, the entire waiting process is bad. The MCAT study period had me on the verge of tears. Actually had me rolling on the ground, literally. That has not happened to me in any other circumstance. But it was definitely a test of it. It was a marathon. What should have been like a 0 gap year affair ended up being 1 gap year. I managed to reel it in 1 gap year, but I can understand why people have more than 1 gap year now. It wasn't fathomable to me in my mind until like crunch time came, and I was like, I only have this many hours for this activity. Ain't no way they're even gonna look at my application.
So the application process is not for the weak.
The application process is not for the weak, the feeble, the I don't know. You gotta like harden your resolve and pray for the best. It's rough seas out there.
I guess it's a good thing we're talking about this now. For people that might not be aware of this process, it's good that they know ahead of time so they can mentally prepare for these challenges. Like I think another factor is like when you're like mentally ready for something, it kind of makes that ride a bit smoother compared to like, oh, it was like a left punch for me.
Yes.
But just moving on to the next question I have. Both of you can I know both of you guys went through the different process, but Kazi, this might be a little bit more irrelevant to you, but I know like when we talked, like you also had things to do with the MCAT, even though you never took one officially to get into University of Rochester. You told about me about the experiences about the MCAT. So my question is like MCAT is like one of the biggest points for like pre-med students. So how did the MCAT factor into each of your guys' battles and into each of your guys' paths? And what advice would you give for students preparing for it? So, Alosha, you might have something more to add to this, but I'm sure Kazi, you also have amazing insight to that as well. I guess, Alosha, you can start. Yeah.
Okay. I would say for the MCAT, horrible experience. 0 out of 10 would not do again. I took that one time. I was not trying to run it back for a second run. I don't think I would have survived the second run. Once again, very optimistic guy. I was like, I'm a sophomore right now. I'm gonna start studying in January. Do my little prep course. I somehow managed to finish or do the MCAT like summer between sophomore and junior year. So I kind of had that off my shoulders during the application process. But the actual study period, I was like, I'll just study for it between classes. That's a good place to start. There's no time between classes, or my attention span is just so cooked by the time I started. It was a matter of like either I study for my classes or I don't study for my classes and I do the MCAT. Both of them were not happening together, even though they were supposed to. So I really only locked in on studying like the summer after classes ended. Like May ended, and it's just like close the books for like the 5 classes I was taking, open the MCAT books, get to prepping, 2 months of hard cramming, and going to the exam. And I think I studied psych soc in a week before the exam. Would not do it, not for the week. If I could go back in time, I would probably tell myself you need to organize this entire thought process better. if you see a kid, I saw a kid cracking open a MacBook like freshman year to do MCAT, the Anki decks. He might have been onto something. I probably should have taken a lesson from him. He might know a ball. I obviously did not.
I guess now for like Kazi, the thing that may be more applicable for you is like how are you preparing for step one or as a medical student?
I will say that I was studying for the MCAT for a good bit of time because, like I said, my original plan was I was trying my best to go straight through. So, like, I didn't know I got into Rochester until like September, October. My MCAT was scheduled for like around there too. So I was like full on studying at somewhere between sophomore and junior year, and it was not fun. Yeah, I didn't like it. It was like a pain in the ass to go ahead and like do the volunteering, the research, and the studying. I remember like the day I got into so like every day like I'd finish Cornell at like 6 or like 7, and then I go down to Belfer Research Building, and then I would study from like 7 to like 12 for the MCAT. And I just kept doing this for like the longest time ever. And the day I got in to Rochester, I threw those books out. Yeah, like right away. I mean, I didn't throw them out. I gave them to the guy in the lab next to me. But my one thing about the MCAT that I will say that not that I've taken it, so my advice, take it with like a lot of salt. But my friend, I know like a close friend, he keeps pushing it and he keeps pushing it and taking more gap years and like he has like some kind of fear of taking the MCAT now, which like it's not good. Like it's not healthy. And I think I usually can speak more to this, but like make sure that like you have a plan and you stick to it. Like it's very easy to be complacent and be like, oh, I'll take it, I'll push it, I'll push it, I'll push it. Like my guy's been pushing it for 3 years now, so don't be like him. Okay. And he's smart. He's like a smart guy too. So like I'm not sure why he's pushing it. So yeah.
Ozzy sounds genuinely concerned.
Yeah. No, I am like I try like I try to like tell him to like lock in, but it's very easy to like just like get it's at the end of the day it's just a test, like you're gonna take it and you're gonna do well because that's what you have to do, and I think that's like the mentality that's gonna help you do good on it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I remember is you'll never feel ready for it, but if you have it scheduled, you should probably just take it then. I pushed it back one time because my optimistic plan of taking it right in May as the semester ended did not work
Mm.
out. But the second time, I was like, I can't keep wasting like $100 to
Yeah,
reschedule this, man. I just
yeah.
gotta suck it up. To take it now.
So another question I have, I spoke to one of my coworkers who was interviewed for PA school, and other than being asked like, oh, why PA, why medicine, she was also asked like, oh, what do you like to do for fun? So what part of your application do you think told the clearest story about who you were and not just, your academics or your clinicals, stuff like that?
That's a great question. I honestly I don't know. I feel like I never have any interesting hobbies. I always like I always lie about this. I'm like, oh yeah, like I like to read books or something. I remember in Rochester's interview, they're like, oh, like what do you like to do? Like, okay, I like historical fiction, right? But like I was so nervous during the interview. I was like, yeah, I like history. That's like it's not real, but like it would be real theoretically if like it happened during that time period. And the interviewer was looking at me like, yo, like what the hell is this? And it was funny. We laughed it off. I think the part although I will say I think the part that said the story clearest about me is when like is when like you're able to just speak genuinely about like with enthusiasm, but like all the stuff that you had to go through to get to exactly where you were, like I remember like my interviewer, one of the most chill. So I was telling like, oh, like yeah, it was a pain in the ass taking the subway 2 hours to Brooklyn to God knows where to just to get to Ditmas Park nursing home. To I used to let them like, oh, like yeah, I just small things like that like really show like you're a human. Like, oh, like yeah, like make sure like things that just emphasize the struggle and make people, because like I've been on like the other end where like I help with the interviews, and it's sometimes like people give such robotic monotone responses like, oh yeah, blah 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 blah. It's like geez, like yeah, like it sounds like ChatGPT is like speaking with me on like the voice feature. Like it just things that make you sound human show you like yeah, that's very bad. It's not worded the best, but I think you guys know what I mean.
Yeah, I totally get it. Like the fact that it shows your human side to it. At the end of the day, like we're all trying to go into this of healthcare, but like every one of us, even like the people that are physicians and like attendings, at the end of the day, they're humans themselves. So I think speaking as to what you were saying, Kazi, is like showing that human side, showing that you have other interests and connecting to that level with whether that be in an interview or like one day with your patient, thing is a big aspect. But I'm sorry to cut you off, Aloshy. You can
I
speak.
good. Um, well, I don't know if the PA application's like this, but the AMCAS one literally has a section for extracurriculars where you can write all your clinical experiences, but you could also just throw in the hobby option. I think you can have like 15 inserts, but you could literally just go out of your way to put a hobby. And I did put a hobby. I've been weightlifting for a couple of years, and somehow it became immensely popular, probably due to TikTok. But like everyone weightlifts
Mm.
now, so throwing in weightlifting as a hobby was pretty relatable for most people because anyone you talk to in medicine is doing some sort of exercise. For the most part, either everyone's running, someone's rock climbing, some people doing weightlifting. But I literally threw that in there because I felt like during the time of application, that was a really big part of who I was. And it was something that really helped me to lock in during the application process because whether or not those applications and secondaries were getting done, I was going to the gym. There's only one thing that was constant in my life at the time, and that was the gym session that was promised. And sometimes I was used to study for the MCAT, but it was studying between sets instead of studying instead of sets. But
Sorry.
I think you can include that kind of thing, or during your secondaries for applications, you can just write about random things you're doing. Like they'll literally ask, "What are you doing this summer?" And I was like, I'm in the mood to overshare. I'm just gonna write that I'm working on my car, and I literally listed what project I was doing on my car. And some of the people, they read that, be like, "Oh, I see you like doing this kind of thing," and I was like, "Yeah, I like doing mechanic work on the side. That's fun and all." But I think it's a good conversation starter if you manage to strike the right chord with people on
Yeah.
what they're interested in as well. But don't be afraid to insert how you two are a human and not just a medical machine.
Yeah. And also, I just want to, I think that was a really good point. It reminded me, I just wanted to say one other thing. Like, if you work like an obscure, like part-time job, or like, let's say you're like a waiter, or like, no, you work fast food or like retail, things like that, like make sure you put that in there. Like, it shows that like you've seen because a lot of times, like, from what I heard directly, is like they want people who are mature and like actually like have real world exposure. And I know like some people don't like put in like useless non-medical jobs, but those are not useless. They're very important. They show like a really big part of you. So like yeah, they definitely put that in.
So speaking about like all the right things to do during the application process, like what do you guys think most pre-med students are like most wrong about when it comes to applying? Like right now I'm doing the secondaries and I know that everybody says, oh, like you need to like return them back within 2 weeks. Like is that a strict kind of deadline? Like doesn't matter if it's in 3 weeks or 4 weeks?
Um, I will tell you, it's not an end all be all because I think I got one in 2 weeks. I know the rules is important. I feel like there's probably an ongoing cycle of like med school advisors telling people pre-write your secondaries and students not pre-writing their secondaries and then going on to tell the next generation pre-write your secondaries. And I'm part of that cycle because my advisors in CCNY literally said you should pre-write your secondaries because a lot of them were like rinse and repeat. And I did not pre-write my secondaries. And like I was fighting battles. That entire process might have been borderline more exhausting than MCAT, just writing up how I never like had to introspect so much. And I never hated about like writing about myself so much as like writing these secondaries up. But I didn't return all mine within 2 weeks and I still got acceptances from those schools. So it's not what's gonna decide your fate, but I'm sure it probably looks better to have it in within the 2 weeks. But I don't think it's gonna be the reason they reject you either. But I would rather that I think everyone would probably rather that you put out quality work than like some slop you wrote in like 2 weeks.
And just for my 2 cents, Sapphire, I think you mentioned you're going through the secondary process. Networking helps a lot. Like personally, like the schools that you're applying to, reach out to like the medical students there, and like try to get someone to like name drop you to admissions. I've personally I've done that for like a friend of mine who was applying, and like it mattered. Like they I mean I don't know how much it mattered, but I could tell you like it mattered. They name dropped my name drop in his like to him, and then they showed him maybe a little more interest because of that. So reach out. I think one thing that like it really helps, and I've helped like people in my lab also apply for the Rochester program, and I like talk to the med students there who are there and ask them like super specific niche questions that only they would know the answer to, and like use those in interviews. Like for Rochester, for example, like when I was helping someone in my lab apply, like I told them the things I genuinely thought were amazing about the school. Like we have like one of the best cadaver programs in the country. I told them, the specifics, like the stuff that like you would only know if you're like very interested in about the school. Like it's not online, it's not on like the YouTube videos, like stuff like that. Like it will really help you stand out because like the interviewers will be like, oh, like that's crazy. Like how the hell do you even know that? And that's exactly what happened to one of my friends. So I think that I just wanted to drop that in there.
Trying to talk more about medical school. Quasi, I have a personal question for you. So as a second year medical student, what is medical school like really like? I mean, we see the kind of like front page, but we don't get to actually like flip through the booklet and read, through the words to get the true like experience of it. So can you tell us like your experience? Do you have a lot of pressure from your family to kind of be on top of it? And how is like what are you sacrificing to kind of push through the medical school?
That's a very good question. I think that medical school, it definitely a lot of studying. I mean, obviously, it's like you hear the expression like, oh, you're gonna learn through a fire hose, whatnot. It's like I've learned more in like the first 3, 4 months of medical school than I did every single year of Hunter combined. Like it was insane. It was insane. It was like you're learning at like a rate that you never learned before. And it's like it's actually mind blowing how much they make you study. It's like yeah, it's and it really depends on what you want to do. And that's really going to shape your med school experience too, because if you're trying to do something competitive, you need to do research, right? That's like the name of the game. And if for me, I'm currently pursuing neurosurgery, so it's definitely one of the more competitive specialties out there, and it's a specialty that you have to be like somewhat towards the top of the class, right? They it's it's a verbal thing that they say so like that involves a lot of studying, so I end up studying like almost every single day, almost every hour of the day. I don't really take breaks that much, and when I'm not studying, I'm doing my research. So that's just like the realistic truth. And honestly, like maybe I'm an inefficient studier, so that's like why I study. So I don't know, I mean, I don't know. But I realistically, yeah, like for what I'm trying to pursue, I end up working like almost every hour of the day that I can. And yeah, no, that's about it. Like I don't like yeah, I think like once you guys get there, you guys are gonna realize it's like a scale on what you want to do, and then just kind of lock in on it. Yeah.
Quasi, do you think it's possible to kind of have like that balance, as students try to keep it 100 or during their undergraduate career, they try to keep like that study balance where they go hang out with their friends. It kind of sounds like it's hard to maintain that. Do you think it's possible? Like maybe any advice you could give for
Oh, for
students?
undergrad?
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
for undergrad, yeah. Oh, you're chilling. Yeah, like undergraduate, like you like. Oh, sorry, I cut you off. You said I mean.
I just wanted to ask, so you spend a lot of time studying, you said every hour of the day. Would you say it's possible as let's say Aloshy is starting his first year? Can you like is there any advice that is important to try and keep that like balance of studying and well relaxing because the pressure is intense?
I will say I'm like I personally like I have a horrible job of finding that balance. I don't like I haven't been able to like find that balance. So it's probably I don't know, it might be like a me thing where I'm not studying as well as I should be, but like truth of the matter is med school's pass fail. So like you don't need to study like it's pass fail, but it's like BS pass fail. I mean, like, in our class, like everybody does extremely well. Like the class averages are in the 90s. Like nobody's actually pass failing. Like no, like everybody wants to do good, and it's really the people that get in too. Like, usually they're very academically driven. Like nobody wants to half-ass anything. And if depending on what you want to do, like I kind of want to be in like the top 10, 15%. So that requires like, you got to be a sweat low key. And I wasn't a sweat in undergrad. which, being a student now is like, it is what it is, it's just like another, you just gotta do it. It's like, and I personally, I don't know, like, I feel like I'm very stressed when I'm not working, which is weird, but like, I get like, I don't know, I really hate it when I'm not working. It just feels wrong. Yeah. So I'm sorry. That's like, yeah. It's like a me thing though. Like, a lot of people are able to find that balance. Like, I think it's like a skill issue on my side that I haven't been able to.
Thank you.
Not in terms of like going into Aloshy, you're about to start medical school, and you're about to start second year of medical school. So like both of your guys' experiences, whether it be for undergrads coming into medical school, what would you say the biggest shock is when you are about to start medical school or like PA school or any other terms of like grad level school that you think undergrads do not fully understand? Aloshy, I think you can
I'll,
take this, or
oh yeah,
Katia,
yeah.
sorry.
No, Alushi got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
How am I gonna got it, bro? My graduate school hasn't started yet.
I mean, I guess like from the experiences that you've heard or like the thing that you're mentally preparing yourself for.
I literally think the biggest difference might be that at this point now, if you're in graduate school, I feel like a lot of undergrad for most people, a lot of the students were all like, fresh out of high school. Everyone's around the same age bracket, pretty similar walks of life, I guess, up until then. You always had like the random few, I guess, that were kind of like on a separate path, right? But I think medical school, quickly just like meeting my roommates, even, it's just that like they have a lot of different shared experiences in life because there's been periods between like going into medical school versus getting out of undergrad. Like they have a lot of experience that I don't have. I feel like the baby again. I am the youngest of my roommates. They're all older by like a year or two, but I feel like the actual little brother of the pack where I feel like I like life experience of having like a full-time job or living on my own, especially because I was commuting from my house for undergrad. So I think it's going to be interesting to more or less finally feel like an adult in this setting because at this point we're capable of getting full-time jobs at this point. We have to kind of accept the fact that we're adults. But I think that'll be an interesting dynamic as well as being more independent from my family because for me at least college just felt like an extension of high school and high school was just an extension of middle school. So I felt like a little kid the entire time.
Yeah, I honestly I relate to that a lot because I also like I commuted from home and whatnot. First time I lived alone was when I came to Rochester, and I think yeah, I usually described it so well. It's like now you're like with people who have a lot of life experiences. Like, there's people. I think the average age is like 25 for matriculant. Correct me if I'm wrong. So there's people who've been out there, and I think that when you do get in, you got to realize it is like a bit more, it is a professional environment. And, there are things that weren't expected of you as an undergrad that will be expected of you as like, a grad student. And you have to like kind of be more on top of like, the way you communicate to people, the way how responsive you are. Um, and, like studying, it's like, again, it's something that you have to be on top of. Like no, nobody's really gonna like kind of hold your hand and tell you like, oh, like this is exactly what you got to do in order to get this particular like specialty. No, it's more so like you're kind of in charge, and then yeah, like you gotta like own up to that. And as for starting, I think that it's definitely like coming from a CUNY. I thought it was a big culture shock, just because like the academic rigor wasn't something that I personally was used to. And I think that it's something that other CUNY students have also kind of mentioned. So it's something to keep in mind. Yeah, like yeah, like I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that Hunter. I think Hunter is like an amazing school, like really really good school, really good pre-med program. People talk good about it all the time, but like it would also be like, I mean, it would be disingenuous to say that like some of our classes aren't freebies, right? So that's my 2 cents there.
And for Aloshi as an incoming MS1, what are you most excited about? I know you're looking forward to meeting your roommates, but maybe like what specialty you're interested in learning more about in terms of like what you want to do in the future, and also what part of medical school feels the most intimidating.
I think the most exciting part is like finally going to a school that is actually going to teach me about something relevant to my career. Because this entire time we've been getting like a gen ed perspective on this major, that major, learning history for some, like, it's important to learn history, but if you're a doctor, I don't know how often you're going to rip a lesson on what Napoleon did back in France all those years ago. But I think to me, it's exciting to be able to learn on something so focused, especially information that I'll be able to use for the rest of my life and my career. Um, and then like said earlier, I'm excited to live alone, have more independence, and also be surrounded by people that are also kind of in the same niche of the field. Because undergrad, you get exposed to engineering students, mathematics students, anthropology students. Everyone is around, but now everyone's kind of on a similar goal. I'm hoping that also means that we're able to help each other out a bit more. Hopefully, everyone's not as cutthroat as I've heard. I'm hoping we can all be friends. That's just the optimistic side of me, though. I might come to a harsh reality. Doc said to be careful.
And Quasi, what advice would you give to Aloshi and other incoming medical students, like about how not to get crushed during the transition?
I think the best advice would be well I think in for I Yoshi in particular, like just having like Anki and everything set up, and I know all that generic stuff, but also like and how not to get crushed. It's like it's I think it's very like it sound kind of cringe, but like it's very nice to like come to the understanding of what kind of privilege we have to like study medicine, like like if you really consider, like we're kind of gonna have like an amazing, you know, career, and all we really gotta do is sit down and study for like a couple hours a day in a library. Like there are people who do so much like more like, I want to say harder, but like tasks that are not as mentally fulfilling. So it's very nice to like kind of just note that like like no matter what happens, you're gonna get to like a career where like you're guaranteed so many things, and you get to like just all you gotta really do is like sit down and like study, which is, like it gets, it is what it is, but it's fun sometimes. So like comparing that to like someone who like works like, 60, 70 hours a week, like some kind of finance job with Excel sheets, like it's, it's nice to, have that. And in terms of like how to like kind of prepare yourself, I don't think pre-studying works, but I think just coming in and like knowing what you want to do like as a specialty, it definitely does help you like make those connections early, which makes a big difference in how you're able to network. And SUNY Downstate actually has an excellent match list. Like they match really well in New York City. So I think that like if you network early, like for whatever you want to do, like you can really kick it, because like those New York City schools, like they do a really good job preparing the med students.
It's good to hear. Someone's gonna have to teach me how to use Anki. I've never used
Yeah, I
I've
never
never
used it either. It's kind of like a learning curve to set it up.
so I'm hoping one of my roommates knows and will teach me.
Yeah,
Yeah, Anki seems like ridiculous to use. It's very tough. I mean, how did you guys stay motivated? I mean, were there cases where you compared yourself to other students, maybe in higher grades, or compared on the students that were on the same level, let's say like a sophomore or a freshman or a junior year? I mean, it seems like everybody's trying to get ahead of each other. And when you compare yourself, it might seem a little bit underwhelming to the goal you're trying to achieve. How'd you guys keep up like that motivation?
You want me to lead for this one?
yeah.
Um, I think you have to take the comparisons with, I don't know if a grain of salt's the right word for it, but like don't let that be the only thing you're focused on. So I think for me personally, doing the comparisons is more or less like something to encourage competition. So if I hear that my peers have this many hours, I'm like, oh man, I am behind in the game. I got to get on that. And if I like, it helps to push me forward because I feel more driven because I'm like, oh no, now the competition is getting ahead. But if you just sit there and just kind of wallow in your sorrow, being like, "Oh, I don't have as many hours as this guy," that's where the real downfall begins. So I think you have to look more so at like how you can sort of, if you want to stay on your own path, you can stay on your own path. If you want to compare stats, you can compare stats. But I think comparing stats is a pretty quick pitfall to like feeling sad and feeling like you're not doing enough, especially because your activities might not always be the same. In other scenarios, you might be the exact same person as another person on paper, but it's really how you react with the information. So I more or less, yeah, like I said, just see it as an opportunity to be like, oh, I could get involved in this activity. Or a lot of the times when they're doing something, you could ask like, yeah, how could I get involved in that activity? That sounds interesting to you. So it's like an opportunity to network into a different task as well. But you can't just sit there and fixate about how they have more hours or you have more hours than them, so you're going to be better than them or they're going to be better than you, because that the stats aren't everything at the end of the day either.
I think that's really well said. I will say in pre-med, I was like a stress ball. Like I always felt like I was like incompetent and I wasn't like, I don't know, I don't know, I just like I perpetually incompetent. It just and you know, like you get back in oral test and like, oh, you know, like you got an A, but like four people got an A plus. Like how the hell did they get an A plus? Like how are they studying? But you know, it's stuff like it doesn't really matter. But like I think that like it's very common to feel like behind and like that you're not doing enough. And I full disclosure, I felt like that like 4 years of med school, for that 4 years of undergrad. Um, so you know, it is what it is. I think people have different ways of coping with it, but like I think it's very important just to be like a nice and like genuinely kind person. Like don't let that make you like a toxic person that like, you know, just like talks like, you know, brings up stats or what everything whatnot. It just it doesn't like there's so much more that goes into it. As Ayushi was saying, for me, like I liked having like a partner, like having like a pre-med buddy. That really helps, honestly. I had Jason, which was funny because we worked in the Schwartz lab and like we had this postdoc. He would every single test we had, he would bring up our test and compare our grades and the questions that we got wrong, and it would be like, oh, like Kazi, you got that question wrong. Like, well, you got it wrong, but Jason got it right. Or like Jason got it wrong, and you got it was like I don't know, but it kept us both accountable. It's and also like like it's not that I wanted to do better. I mean, yes, I did want to do better than Jason, and Jason wanted to do better than me, but we both really liked each other, and we are like best friends. So it made like a very nice like partnership, and we collaborated on research, and we still collaborate on research, and I think that it's very nice to have like people. It's hard to do pre-med solo. I mean, I think so. I think it's like you need people to tell you like like, oh, like lock in, like make sure you study, like don't get behind, things like that. And it's very nice having like a friend, because feeling behind is normal. Like you always will feel behind, so don't let that discourage you. Like there's always gonna be bad days. Just look forward to the good one, because one and then you have like a bunch of bad ones, but like the ones like what you need to reset.
Yeah, I think that's a really good note. But wanted to ask you, Kazi, specifically, like that you finished your first year of medical school, now you're starting your second year. Like, what would you say, like, for people that might not have a lot of insight into like what medical school is like, what each year is like, and how they differ, like what most of the people, I know it might be different from school to school, like the timelines, the deadlines, and what students do. What would you say the general gist is like from year to year?
Yeah, that's a great question. Typically, for most schools, your first year will just be clinical, I mean, preclinical studies, right? So this is kind of where you learn like the foundations of how to actually like understand medicine as a language, because like the biology that we took in undergrad, like even like the higher level biology classes, like I don't think they scratch the surface of what like you're actually expected to know. So it's very much so like you're understanding like the language, like how to actually like interpret it. And other than that, your second year is again another preclinical year where it's taking genetics, pharmacology, microbiology, biology. You're learning how to interact with patients, doing standardized simulations. And then some schools like Rochester has like a model where you start doing like like you incorporate like your first family medicine rotation, and then you start seeing real patients. And yeah, so that's essentially that. You take your licensing exam at the end of your second year. In your third year, you start your rotations. So this is where it's not pass or fail anymore. This is where you're compared against the rest of your classes, the rest of your class. So, for every rotation, you will be given like a certain grade, and it will be like a percentile. So you're either like high honors, good, not good. And that's, depending on your performance relative to your peers. So that's like kind of the first time in most pass fail schools where you're kind of directly competing with your peers. And your fourth year is typically like the year where you know, apply for your residency. Typically the first half of the year, and the second half of the year, you can usually have a good time. Like, you know, they usually have fun the second half of the year. And then other than that, it's like research years are very common, becoming very common. As in like you typically take a year after your fourth year or between your third and fourth year to get more research in like the specialty that you're applying to, depending on the specialty. If you're doing like plastic surgery per se, right? There's almost a required research year during medical school if you want to do plastic surgery. And then you know other like I'm sure you guys seen the numbers. Like there's a very strong drive to have like products, research products. So that you know that incentivizes taking a research year sometimes, which you don't have to do, but it's looking like it's more and more common.
You know, like, is it similar to like undergrad in terms of pursuing research and medical school? Like, do you contact like the professors or like the labs there that, oh, I'm really interested in this field and I want to pursue and specialize in this? How do you go about that in terms of like the specialty you want to go to and being matched to that research you're doing as well?
That's a really good question, and I will say I'll start off. One, getting research in med school is way easier than undergrad. Like the opportunities are just like they like because like you know for undergrads and I'm just gonna put like it's very hard to train someone who doesn't know like you know if you don't know how to read like an MRI like it's like sitting down and teaching you how to read MRI it's not like time maxing, you know. But for med students, you know, it's easier to like teach, you know, it's easier to have them do things like that. So there is some research that I think in medical school that you're a lot more you're given opportunities to pursue like a lot more research. So it's very easy to get it. Completing it on the other hand is like, you know, it's very hard to find time because obviously you want to study and there's also like it's like undergrad where like you gotta check those boxes again, right? Like you gotta do your volunteering, you gotta do your research, you gotta get your good grades. But yeah, it is a lot easier than undergrad. Typically, you know, you reach out to a doctor, and one common mistake that I think people make is like they email and be like, "Hey, can I get research?" Like it's very like it may probably not going to work like that. Something that I think does work well if you do want research, and it's something that like it worked well for me that like helped me get like a few projects is like I come up with the idea and I send it to them, and I come up with like they expect you to be like a grad student, right? They expect you like to know the basics of how to set up a project and how to like you know be able to get the data, analyze the data, things like that. And not all of it, but just you know just like an outline. Like if you email someone and be like, hey, like I want to work with you on research, like okay, like what do you want to work with me with, you know? And then versus like if you tell them, oh, I want to like study this specific topic, I want to study it using this data set, this is how I'm going to get access to that data set, like things like that. That makes you very appealing. That makes people think that you know you are competent and you know what you want and you have a plan to get it. Like for me, like I had undergrads contact me for research from Rochester, and like I had a few. I had one recently who honestly she made a really good pitch, and I put her on like some of my projects because she just shows that like she's very like she knows exactly what she's doing. Not that she knows exactly what she's doing, but she is very like responsive and she has like a plan in mind on how to like approach the research topic more so than like me explain everything bit by bit by bit, which I
Mhm,
think it makes it a bit faster.
mhm. And another question I had, I'm not sure if this is true, but I've heard rumors or people just say, in terms of like comparing step one and step two. So I'm not sure, like I said, it's not sure if it's true, but I've heard like step one is more intense in terms of they're combining like undergrad with medicine. So now you have to learn about the mechanism and like the whole process of like the human body, right? Connecting that to the human body. And step two is more in terms of like picking out like buzzwords. Oh, does this patient comes in with this and this, and quickly analyzing that and identifying the answer. So what's your take on it? I'm not sure if you know that particularly well.
I think like it's definitely like it's true to like an extent that there is a lot more basic science in step one because step one is like making sure that you understand the basics, the fundamentals, and the fundamentals are very, very intense, right? But I wouldn't say step two is like easier. Step two, the stakes are a lot higher. You
Mhm.
guys definitely seen like the score inflation with the MCAT, right? Like the average MCAT goes up like a point or two, whatnot. Like every year, it's like every
Mhm.
year there's like, oh, the average is like 514 now, or like 550, whatever it is, right? Um, that definitely is happening for step two as well. Like the averages for specialties, they go up and up and up. And that's just because people are studying a lot more for it because now it's like the one that it's the most meaningful exam that you will take. And both the steps, I will say that the exams are incredibly difficult. Like they are not easy. Um, like for MD students, like I think like that national is like what, like a 91, 92%, which sounds high, but like in reality, like that means like 1 out of 10 people don't really pass it the first time around, which is, it's considering the demographic, it's very it's interesting to think about, right? But yeah, I think that it's very like they're really hard exams, so it's definitely yeah, they're hard. Yeah.
I think if anyone else doesn't have questions, I think we're good to wrap it here. So just want to say, Qazi and Aloshy, like thank you so much for your taking part of your time to speak with us today. And this will be posted on our socials and it will be shared by on our socials. So it will be viewed by many people. So the insights that you guys shared has been very exciting and very encouraging to hear from both of you guys' perspectives in terms of how you guys both took different paths, but still ended up getting to medical school and different paths as well. So thank you again for joining us. And I think that's it. Thank you very much. Boom, boom.